Hello, I'm Nash Lewinsky and you're watching TVP World Talks, where every word matters. Now, words certainly do matter in politics, but also actions, of course. The question is, what's going to happen in Ukraine? We have a clear statement from presidential candidate Kamala Harris that America will not abandon Ukraine. As for Donald Trump, of course, his statements have been more equivocal during the last few months. How to make sense of that, and how is it going to influence the situation in Ukraine itself? We're going to talk about this and more with our guest today, Magdalena M, Baran, editor-in-chief at Liberte. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning.
So should America's allies feel reassured following the DNC and the statement from Kamala Harris? This pertains both to Ukraine, NATO, also to Israel.
I think that we, as the allies, should feel much better than listening to Donald Trump, because there is we didn't hear from Kamala words that we are going to leave NATO, as Donald Trump suggested several times, including some meetings with a future chief of NATO. So we need to make this step into the trust, to trust Kamala Harris right now, as the allies, as NATO, but also as the neighbors. Neighbors that is a key word of the convention of Democrats this year. We heard Kamala, but not only Kamala, speaking about the security and about Ukraine, about relations within the European Union, but also with the European Union and with the Middle East. So two wars that in fact are conducted right now in the world. Two wars, of course we have more wars right now, but those two are, I would say, at the front line of our media, and they have a really strong impact on the international relations. Especially that, thinking of them, we have in mind not only the sides, so Ukraine and Russia, or Israel and Hamas, but also, for example, Iran and China and North Korea, and so on and so on. So other countries that might be involved. And in fact, about those countries was talking Mark Kelly, Senator of Arizona, this night, speaking just before Kamala Harris, and he was talking that those countries are watching the electoral process and what will happen in the US very carefully, and they're considering what to do next.
And I'm glad that you mentioned Mark Kelly, because he is career military. I mean, he is the man that was considered as one of the main components, so to say, of Kamala's retinue when it comes to security and defense. So Kamala Harris also had this to say: as president, I will never waver in defense of America's security and ideals, because in the enduring struggle between democracy and tyranny, I know where I stand, where the United States of America belongs. So this is a crucial statement there. On the other hand, we have Donald Trump, whom Kamala accused of basically suggesting that he would leave NATO, but also of threatening countries that are not paying their dues, that America will stand idly by and allow Russia to do whatever it wants. So would you say that we have a basic understanding of where these two directions in politics are now, or is there more to it? In particular, some people are saying, well, Trump is saying he's going to solve these conflicts. He's not saying how. Perhaps he might have a plan we don't know about.
You just reminded me Bill Clinton talking to the convention 2 days ago, and he said, can you remember that Donald Trump told, I can do just one call, a few calls, and I will end all the wars all over the world, in fact. So Clinton suggested that, we know that those calls will be called to Putin, called to Kim Jong-un. So he asked, of course, rhetorically, if we really would like to have those people as our allies, if we really would like to have the respect of such countries for our country. And when we talk about Kamala, in fact, this is not the. There are a few other things in her yesterday's speech or last night's speech, but it's not her first statement about cooperation with the allies about the Ukraine. There was that conference in February 17th in Munich. And during the press conference she had together with Volodymyr Zelensky, she said that this is not only that the war, of course, is the failure of Putin, but she said that this is the support for Ukraine is a strategic aim of the United States. And it was a really, really strong statement, probably showing the whole politics. It was before the voting for the next part of money for Ukraine, that's $61 million. And we need to have in mind that $61 billion is not only it's not a given money that are given to Ukraine, but it's a part alone. And she suggested many times in other speeches that it is also to support the American military industry, in fact, to deliver guns and other military equipment to Ukraine. So it is also investment for the American industry, and it is important.
So what we know is that Kamala Harris prefers a principled approach. Rules of international law are to be upheld. Donald Trump, it's more of an enigma, transactional politics. So what the Democrats are saying, this is a risk. We don't know what's going to happen. But let's focus for a moment on the track record of the Democrats so far when it comes to helping Ukraine. Critics, not just some of the Republicans, but also some others, are saying that the US could have done more. It was helping Ukraine, that's a good thing, but more could be done. Do you think Kamala Harris is going to step up America's efforts to help Ukraine, for example, by hiring somebody else than Mr. Jake Sullivan as National Security Advisor? He is being blamed very often for this whole escalation narrative. So let's just, keep things restrained so as not to anger Russia. Do you think it's going to change now, if Kamala Harris wins?
I think that the first step will be to continue Biden's policy, because she was exactly wearing his shoes during at least the last year. Because she was, for example, replacing him in during this conference in Munich. So it was exactly continuation of his policy. But I think that the US should show, how to say, not more power, but should be more effective. And this is something we heard in her last night's speech, because just next to the word you mentioned, she was talking about making American army the strongest in the world. Also, that US in the military and in its military effort should win the rivalry with China, and of course should support Ukraine and the allies. But next step was also to say, was this part about solving problems and being engaged in solving wars. I mean, not only Ukraine case, but also the war in the Middle East, so the conflict between Israel and Hamas. And this is really interesting. I heard just before we started to talk, it was the part of the of her talks when she was talking about that she will stand up for Israel and its right to defense, and also she will help. She needs to be sure that it is able to defend itself. But then we could hear her saying that okay, we need to be engaged in a proper deal to stop the hostilities. Israel should feel safe. We need to free the hostages, but also we need to stop the devastation of Gaza, the horror, in fact, of people in Gaza. But what is really important here, and it might be a sign of something more than just being engaged in solving the everyday conflict, but something more, maybe even a long-term conflict between Israel and Palestine. Because she said, yeah, Israel is one thing, but we need to help We need to make Palestinian nation able to live free, as free and safe, and in self-determination.
It's exactly the words were really the right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination.
Yep, exactly.
Do you think this will be enough to placate those who would rather have the United States at least curb its support for Israel and provide more support to Palestine? Some of the Democrat voters, well, they don't really appreciate what's going on right now. They say we should do more to help Palestinians. 40,000 people killed. That's quite a lot. It should stop right now. On the other hand, if she maintains support for Israel, I mean, where are these voters going to go? They're not going to vote for Trump, probably. So what are the risks there in this balancing act?
Oh, right now it will be probably about balancing and about diplomacy, at least for the next 2 months, 2 months and a half, because it is the time we have to the day of the election day. And we need to observe also what is happening between the US and Israel. Last week we had negotiations between Israel and Hamas, and this week, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, Antony Blinken came to Israel and he talked to Netanyahu. And yeah, after this talk, he said everything is settled. But just the next day, Netanyahu met the families of the hostages. And the message he gave them was not so sure about it. And really, I heard it from some of those families with whom I'm befriended with, and they were really surprised because they thought it is a step in a good direction. So we still expect that phone call that Biden promised to make to Netanyahu and to the results of this phone call. But after just a last thing about it, but for sure it is the good side of this negotiation is that we, at least for this moment, we still have a threat from Iran, but Iran didn't attack Israel as it was expected.
It has delayed its response. One more question before we finish. Do you think this message on security will be convincing to swing voters, perhaps even to Republicans who might be prepared to flip? A former Republican representative, Mr. Adam Kinzinger, was actually a guest on the convention, and he criticized Donald Trump in no uncertain terms. He said, and I quote, "He suffocated the soul of the Republican Party." Do you think that voices like that might actually be pivotal for those who are thinking, well, perhaps voting Democrat is something I might do because I wouldn't like to vote for Donald Trump specifically?
There was one moment also, I think it was in his speech when he said, can we vote for someone who do not respect our heroes? And you know, there are several symbolic personalities in US, and the army, the representative of the army is, and the American hero is one of those, just next to the pastor, to the sheriff, and to the teacher or a football coach as Tim Walz is.
So a symbolic figure indeed. So this is basically the overall assessment of the situation there. Magdalena M. Baran was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for laying bare the intricacies of the Democrat National Convention.
Thank you.
And I'm Jonasz Lewiński. You're watching TVP World. Please do stay with us.